Welcome to the Real People, Real Business Show, where we're talking with business owners who are in the trenches, everyday people who are working hard and have relevant and inspiring stories that you can relate to. Everyone we speak to is actively building and growing their business and is here to share their experiences, lessons, wisdom, and guidance so you can be inspired to take action towards your own goals. Today, I'm so excited to welcome my friend Ashton Robertson, who creates brand narratives that help businesses and entrepreneurs strategically communicate their value with authenticity and grace. I love that. What an amazing way to describe what you do. And I think it matches you and your personality so spot on. So welcome to the show, Ashton, and thanks so much for taking the time to share your story today.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here and chat with you.
So give me the goods. How did you get to where you are right now? Tell me a little bit more about your business.
So I started my business full time just over a year ago, January of last year. And I got to this point where I am now kind of slowly. It was a discovering process. I've known since I was in undergrad that the cubicle life was not for me. I did it for a couple of years and I never really thought that 9 hours of my day every single day was a fair trade to just afford to live. So I wanted to take out on my own, but I went to grad school to study language and communication and figuring out the strategy behind it and also how it affects people. And just learning that over my time in grad school was like eye-opening. And I realized I love it. I love like the geeky, nerdiness of like just figuring out the details of how people communicate. And so when it came time for me to try to set out on my own, this was the obvious answer. And that curiosity has always made me a good writer. And it has been a journey discovering who my ideal clients are, but I've always known that my skill set is what I want to be sharing with people.
So tell me a little bit about that ideal client, like that journey you did not always do what you're doing now.
Right. I started out in the travel industry because I love to travel. And so I thought, oh, well, if I love to travel, I must love the travel industry and want to work with business owners there. And it turned out that it wasn't my ideal scenario because my community and my personal network is not B&B owners or people who are trying to promote destinations. And although they are doing amazing work, I personally love working with people who are starting an online business on their own because there's so much opportunity right now. And there's so many people starting businesses, especially women, like for the first time and figuring out what they want to share with the world. That is 100% where my heart lies. But it took me a long time to figure that out. It was really like September or October of last year when I finally was like, okay, I'm making the switch. I'm doing this. I knew it was going to be a step back. And so I was scared, but I got there. And so this Brazen Story Co. launched in October with the audience that I'm loving working with now.
Awesome. I remember when you made that transition and it was just like the heavens opened up and you were like, oh.
Yes, that was it. I was just like, oh, this is where I was supposed to be the whole time.
But so tell me a little bit more about what you do now with your clients. So you're out of the travel industry. Yes. And you are working with small business owners, entrepreneurs. There's been an explosion of enablement, I think, for people to become entrepreneurs when they haven't in the past.
Yeah, that opportunity, like I was talking about before, it's like people are realizing that we have so much more agency, and I love helping them communicate in a way that reflects that. So what I do with my one-on-one clients is create communication strategies because everyone is freaking out about the question, so what do you do? Because we're not in these like buckets anymore. It's not just like, oh, I have this clear and obvious job, like, I'm an accountant or whatever. People have all these multiple revenue streams. They have just like really unique niche, like tarot reading businesses, all this, like all kinds of stuff. Like you can be like a professional giraffe consultant. Like there's so many like things that people are doing, and it's hard to communicate even when like I do good work, but I'm not a writer. I'm not a marketer. That's not my skill set. So being able to figure out how to talk about your work in a way that translates to business growth and sales is tricky for a lot of people. And so that's where I come in, is help people level up from I'm just winging it with how I'm talking about my business to, oh, I have a plan. Like, this is what I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to communicate. This is who I'm talking to. And this is what they need to know. So
Because I think that clarity is what holds a lot of people, or the lack of clarity is what holds a lot of people back from actually taking the action and showing up and being like fully present, right?
100%. And I know it because I've lived it. When you don't have a bio, you don't have like a one-liner, or you're not like confident about the title you're using in your business, that's when you hide from opportunities like podcast interviews or articles that you want to write, or just reaching out to ideal clients whenever they pop up. If you don't have kind of your foundational message in place, then you hide from that and you don't feel like you can grow on the fly. It's something that we tend to hold back.
So are you actually helping them craft their messaging? Are you doing writing yourself?
Yes. So for one-on-one clients, I am. I don't do necessarily bios. I know that my clients are the content experts. So I'm not writing their freebie PDFs for them or anything like that. I'm showing them, this is your client journey. It's something that you kind of know intuitively, but you aren't necessarily communicating because you need it all planned out. And then here's what people need to know at each step along the way to realize that you are the guide who can help them get to whatever their goal is. So I do writing. I do a lot of writing projects, and I have some content projects right now, but I love community. In March, I am planning to launch kind of a group community and coaching program to help people create that strategy more as a done with you than done for you service. And I'm really excited about that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So you're going to work with people in more of a group environment.
100%, because community and connection are really important to me. And it's, again, taken a long time for me to realize things that are important to me can be integral parts of my business. Like, it doesn't have to be separate.
Not can be, should be.
You're right. You're right.
Should be. And so what was your background? Like, you have a lot of education.
Yes, I definitely, that's one of the things that I kind of enjoy, or one of the things that's different about my approach is that I originally came at language and writing more from a social perspective and an academic perspective. My background and training is not in sales. It's not in marketing. It's in, how does language affect people? How does it affect, the people you're talking to and the people you're talking about, and how does it affect society? And so that's something that I really, really enjoy learning about, and making sure that we're considering in our business, because everyone's getting bombarded with messages all day, like every day, and they're all selling something. So making sure that we are being really intentional about the effects that our communication can have on people is really important. And I never want that to get lost in my writing or in my clients' messages.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to talk about their own business?
I think it's because there's no plan right now. There's no like easy, clear, I've been doing this for, like, if you're starting a new business, a lot of times, I don't know if it's especially women, but I work with women the most. And it's like, we feel like because we don't have 40 years of experience and a PhD in whatever we're doing, then somehow we don't have the right to communicate that we're experts, even when we are. And it's, everybody talks about this, well, the word has just left me. Imposter syndrome. There we go. And it's a real thing. And it's much more insidious, like, than you think. Because you can think, oh, I've got that in the bag. I know that I'm good. And then you'll look up in 6 months and be like, wait a minute. I haven't been stepping into this fully when I could have been. So I guess the easy answer is imposter syndrome, but it can be more complicated than that.
Yeah, I think, and I don't like to make a distinction all the time between men and women, but men are given permission to speak in grandiose terms about what they do, but we're always told that we grew up thinking you need to be nice, you don't talk highly about yourself. And so we still have a hangover from that culture, right? Of if we are too loud or too
Outspoken.
outspoken, or we talk highly about ourselves, we're undesirable.
That is 100% true. It's a permission thing. And one moment of my like personal journey of realizing like, oh, I should be speaking up, has been an important part, like looking back and creating my business. I had a moment where I was at a family lunch and someone was sharing these really awful conspiracy theories, some kind of racist stuff. And people in my family knew that I was not cool with that, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to rock the boat. I was, trying to be quiet. And when we left, somebody said, "Hey, you did good today," and I realized, oh, I don't want this approval anymore. I don't need permission, and I don't need to be this version of a good girl. And so when I kind of forget that I do have permission to be outspoken and to be myself and to share my truth and my perspective, I think about that moment and I realize people who don't like it, that's not who I need approval from.
Well, and I think there's a bigger social conversation about this too, right? I think there's like 20 years between us, something close to that anyway. And we're both looking at this issue and wanting the same outcome. And there's a generation coming up now, this millennial generation, that is going to be responsible for changing the conversation. And we all need to change the conversation, but there's still so much ingrained, like, oh, you shouldn't speak up, you did good, right? And that almost now comes with some guilt and some shame because we haven't been part of the conversation. So what's interesting, I think, about you is that you have this other sort of theme and agenda that you have been speaking about outside of just the work that you do. Is about being kind of these fierce women and being unruly. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, totally. So I called my business Brazen Story Co. because brazen has always or traditionally been a word that's kind of used to say you're too much, you're too loud, you have too much audacity. And then I was in a group chat that we're actually both in, and one of our friends, Mio, shared this crazy message that someone had shared with her. Sorry. And this person was complaining about a rise in unruly women in America today. And there was a whole group about it in Florida, just like these people complaining about women being unruly and not wanting to follow the traditional path or become necessarily wives who stay at home, which is great if that's what you want, but they were complaining about people who don't want it. And I was like, oh, like you want to deal with, like you don't want a rise in unruly women, let's just connect around that, because we've been called this, we've had people complain that we don't want the traditional thing and kind of judge us. So let's just keep it up, because I want people to know that you do have permission to seek something different. And if you like whatever your journey is, it's okay.
It's yours, right? And I think it's less about, I think the commentary now is less about it should be this thing or it should be that thing. It's more like, just mind your own business, right? Whatever you
Yeah.
want, go get it. And nobody has a seat at your table, right? Nobody else gets to decide. If it's white picket fences and being a stay-at-home mom, great. As long as you're happy, right? As long as this is your
Exactly.
choice and you have the agency in your life to decide. And I think that whole concept of being unruly is I always loved this word when I heard you start to use it. But this whole concept is not about the bra burning anymore. It's not about marching on the White House. This is just
Yeah.
about, like, just do your thing, right? Just speak when you have an opportunity to speak. And we need to slowly break down those cultural norms that we've grown up with.
100%. And then you interviewed Ashton the other day, and she calls it the committee of true and actual greatness in her book. And I loved the idea. When I read it, I like highlighted just knowing that you are your committee. Like no one else is on your committee unless you want to put them there. So it's okay for you to make your own decisions and stick with them.
Yeah, and I think we don't realize how many of these influences we have on our lives on a daily basis, right? Where all of those things have come from and what have you. So I think being conscious, and I think men have to do the same thing, right? I think being conscious and being aware is the most important thing that we can do, because we need that agency. We need to be able to make those decisions for ourselves, because boy, would we have a different world if we had a whole bunch of happy people out there.
Right?
Right. And Mio is going to be on the podcast in a couple of weeks. So we'll get to talk to her about Unruly Women as well.
Perfect.
Yeah. So let's get back to your business. So now you're in this place where things feel aligned, things feel good, and you are now working with who?
So I am working with people who have been freelancing for a while, and usually they're ready to raise their rates or they're in a period of transition. They're trying to level up in some way, and they need the message to stand behind. So if it's people who already have a great product, a great service, a great offer, and happy clients, but they're wondering, why is the growth not happening? Why do I not feel like I can stand up and shout this from the rooftops and be on every podcast and, just promote it as a business? I'm still feeling shaky. And often that comes from not having that message identified and ironed out and ready to share, especially internally. So with your team, if you're wanting to build a team and they don't know like what ship they're getting on, that becomes really hard to get people all on the same page when there's no cohesive message for everyone to be sharing. So that's who I'm working with, especially service providers, all kind of like copywriters, coaches, course creators. That's who I work with. Especially, I find that this struggle becomes really important in personality driven brands, kind of people who, you are sort of your offer. Like people want your expertise. And if you don't have traditional qualifications, but you're really good at your job, then it becomes super important that you can communicate that quickly.
Yeah, we have what I call the curse of the expert, right? We know too much about our businesses, and it gets really hard to start to communicate that because we know too much, right? And what people need to hear in order to relate to us is something a little bit more succinct, something, pulling out those main ideas. I think when you've gotten into your business for so long, it becomes muddy, right? It becomes muddy because we have too many things to say.
Yeah, it's hard to read the label from inside the jar.
Oh, I
And
like that.
I didn't come up with it. I don't remember where I read it first, but I've always thought it was the most accurate depiction. It's often in marketing called the curse of knowledge. You are trying to, whatever you're selling is usually not necessarily what people are actually looking for. And so knowing how to bridge that gap and say, I'm offering this tangible, but actually what you're getting is this transformation. What you're getting is this help getting to your goal. Even if I don't deliver on that goal, I'm helping you, giving you something, providing a way for you to get there. And communicating that next step is so important.
Yeah, I mean, we do this work as part of the offer design work that I do in my programs. And typically this is like marketing focused work, but I find you actually need to do it earlier when you're designing your offers and when you're figuring out how you're manifesting your skills to your audiences, because really people need to know where they fit into their customer's journey, and they need to know early on if your customer's over here saying I want this one thing because they haven't been educated enough yet to know that they actually need another thing. So if a lot of business owners make that mistake, they're sitting over here talking about this other thing that they know so much about, but their customers are over here talking about something else entirely because they don't know yet. They don't know what their problem actually is. And so we have this big gap, right? We have this big problem because your customers aren't hearing you.
Yeah, and I love that you teach that in the offer creation part, because what often shakes out is realizing oh, this first offer that I have, maybe it's not getting people all the way. Maybe there's a natural next step that I need to also be sharing. Or, maybe there are people coming at it from an earlier point where I need to be offering something before this step. And so, like you said, knowing that customer journey impacts everything, not just your communication. It impacts your offer suite, your marketing, your sales, and even the way you deliver that offer. 100%.
Yeah, I agree. And so what I know about you is you're a very smart lady, and you have come up with a bit of a unique way to approach getting this work done. Can you talk a little bit about sort of your custom framework, your custom signature offer
Yes.
that you do?
100%. I would love to. So I have I call it the brazen narrative, just brazen business narrative, because so everyone has this journey, like we were just talking about, that your clients are on. And when we go to talk about our business, sometimes we fall into this trap of saying, oh, this is what I do. This is what I create. This is, starting with why I'm qualified, because it feels like something that we need to convince people of. But really, super successful businesses and strong brands aren't talking about their product. They're not talking about their service. They're talking about their clients. And knowing that your clients are the main character, it changes the way you approach your brand's story. So my framework helps people figure out, who are the main characters? Who am I talking to? What is the problem that we're solving? And knowing that there's layers to that, because people often try to sell solutions and sell tangibles, but people aren't looking for that. They're looking for help with an internal problem. And knowing that you can communicate how that problem's making them feel and how you can help them stop feeling that way is super important. So that's the second part, after knowing who your ideal clients are and knowing that you can talk to just your ideal clients. You don't have to try to appeal to everyone, because A, it's not going to work. And B, you want to be attracting those people who are a really good fit. And then the third part is knowing that you can communicate your unique approach and your perspective or your framework or whatever it is that you bring to the table. And then the fourth part is just being able to communicate those extra benefits and how having a solution helps people live out their values in a meaningful way. Not just, hey, you now have this worksheet. Like, no one cares. But if you can say, hey, you're going to grow and you're going to be where you want to get and living in alignment with your values, that's something that people remember. Because when you make your story about them, suddenly it's not marketing and it's not sales, it's their story and they're talking about it.
So that's an interesting take on this, that living in alignment with your values. So what does that end up looking like?
So it's often about identifying the values of your ideal clients and saying, how is this problem that I solve stopping people from living out their values, whatever it is? For you, I've heard you talk about before that it's work-life balance. It's making sure that you're, creating a business that's sustainable, because it's important to you to have time for your life and not being like a victim of your business. So knowing that you can identify that early and make sure that that is the kind of frame that goes in all of your marketing and all of your messages, then you can communicate repeatedly, hey, I understand you. I hear you. I see what's important to you. And I work in a way that respects that. Suddenly, you're not like a salesperson who's trying to take advantage of them. Not that you ever were, but sales messages can come across that way. If you're saying, I respect your values, I understand, or I even share them, then you're a friend who's helping them get what they want.
That's super interesting, because one of the things about selling is that selling is inherently conflict, right? Because you want one thing and your customer wants something else, and you're trying to find a way to come together in a place that's acceptable to both of you, right? But I've always been a fan of turning the sales conversation around into, a collaboration, right?
A
A
win-win.
collaboration and just simply an experience where you can serve someone and make someone feel better. Because let's face it, people buy based on how they feel. So how do we change the conversation around selling? Because it's such an uncomfortable thing for people, especially people who are new to business and who have never had to sell something before. Um, I have opinions on how this happens from from your skills perspective, but in terms of what you're messaging out to the world, how do we change that conversation?
The simplest change that I found for people is make it an invitation. You know, if you hate the word selling, if you can't get past that feeling of, oh, I don't want to be a salesperson, I'm not a salesperson, then stop selling. But show people that you want to invite them to work with you, or you want to invite them to try your solution. And if you have the numbers, if you know that your offer is good and you know it works, and you're just inviting people to try it, that's a very different mental feeling. And there is a bigger conversation around, you know, making sure that it's a win-win situation, and making sure that your business is delivering what it promises to, so that you know it's a win-win situation. But yeah, if you just need that first little switch, I always tell people, think of it as an invitation, not a sales pitch.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, it's an invitation for a conversation. It's an invitation for discovery, isn't it?
Yeah, you're just offering them the opportunity to take the next step to what they already want to achieve. And that again goes back to knowing that you know what their journey is, you know what they want to accomplish, and you're not trying to sell to everyone. Because I think a lot of that icky feeling comes from when people don't exactly have figured out yet who they're talking to. So then it becomes a lot more difficult to say, oh, I know this is going to work for you, if you don't know what they already want to accomplish or what their end goal is.
Here's the other thing about selling is that it gets a lot more comfortable when you do more of it, right?
That is 100% true.
Shying away from the opportunity to have a sales conversation. Like I just finished up a 2-week intensive working on the sales team for someone else's launch. And I'll tell you, you get an education pretty quickly when you are immersed in 14 hours a day of sales conversations over email, in conversation with people. And this was like we don't sell in an icky way, right? For this program, we sell in a very like service oriented way. So I credit my sales skills with having practiced a lot, right? When you have to do it. And so when we worry about selling, the irony is that the way we get better at it is by doing more of it.
That's very true. And I think another thing that can help with that is when you know that the sale, like if you are a person who gets people on a sales call or on a free consult, knowing that you're providing advice even during that, and if you know yourself and know that you're not going to try to push this on someone it's not a good fit for, you know, you're saying, I am giving you my expertise in this moment. If I think this is a great fit for you, I want to invite you to join. But if I don't, I'm going to say, actually, you need to go over here and try something else first.
That's right. So I'll do that all the time, right? It's like flipping that perspective so that a sales conversation is more of an interview from you, right? Like I don't want to work with somebody who I'm not a good fit for, or is not a good fit for me. Neither one of us is going to be happy. And there's like 0 point in taking that on. So flipping that sales conversation to one where we are both interviewing each other really changes the energy.
It totally does.
And so how are you selling? How are you starting to develop business?
So kind of surprisingly, a lot of mine has come from LinkedIn and Instagram, just talking with people and just sharing over and over. I think a lot of people, if they don't get any buzz or any engagement when they first start talking about their offers on whatever their social media platform is that they love, they're like, oh, this must not work. This must not be right for me. And then they just hide. So they try it a little bit, dip their toes in, it doesn't work immediately. And then they're like, oh no, I've just got to go back to talking about what I ate today and my dog, which is great, by the way. I want all of the puppy pictures, but You have to do it consistently, and that has started to pick up for me. I just keep sharing and keep talking, and I get DMs, every time I share an offer, people are saying, oh, that really connected with me. That one struck a chord or struck a nerve. And then I just offer a call. I offer to get on the phone or talk with them. And like you said, we interview each other and see, are you a good fit? Is this right? Or should I maybe point you in another direction for whatever your next step should be? Because like you said, if they're not a good fit, I don't want them to have a bad experience. And I don't want to have a bad experience trying to make it work.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that that's a really important point, that a lot of people kind of stop before they get traction. And content production, like just putting content out there, is not necessarily going to help you build an audience, because you actually need to go out and club them over the head and bring them back to your nest, right, where you are creating all this great content. And showing up and engaging and talking is a really important part of that. But it's like, people pay attention to people they know. And when you become known, that is when you have more of an opportunity to sell. But if I'm just throwing you an offer with being totally cold, like no one's going to buy that way. So we do need to do our time. We do need to, and sometimes it can be really discouraging to feel like you're just shouting into the void. But eventually people start to remember, they start to take notice, they start to make comments. And that happens over time. You've done a really good job of that. You've built a huge audience. Well, huge from my perspective in your social channels. And I think it's been by just being consistent, right?
Yeah. And making sure that I'm not, something that I tell people when they're trying to do the same thing is, don't worry so much about what it is you want to communicate. Ask yourself what people need to hear. And those are very different things. And I don't mean, ask yourself just what they want to hear. This doesn't need to become an echo chamber, but making sure that your focus is in the right place. And that makes your message more memorable because it's no longer yours, it's theirs. And like you said, yeah, it takes a lot of, I think, what's the old wisdom? Like you have to hear something 7 times before you believe it.
Yeah.
And so you're also kind of fighting the algorithms, and, people aren't always online, hopefully. So they're not going to see everyone. And
yeah, no, totally. They aren't. And that's why, like, the continual I tell people they need to be relentlessly visible, right?
oh,
Because
yes, I love that phrase.
that's going to be like, people are going to see like a fraction of it, right? No matter what you do.
Totally. And
there's a little core group of people who are like constantly listening to you, but other than that.
Right. And one thing that people also think is, oh, I have to be on every platform. I have to talk all the time. And that is 100% not true. You do not have to post every day. You do not have to be on every platform, because if you hate the platform you're on, if you're on Instagram all the time trying to push and you personally despise Instagram, it's not going to do you any good. You're not going to stick to it, and you're not going to create a community or a space for people to share, because people can feel that you're just posting something and running away. So I always tell people it's all about the conversation and the community you're building. And if you don't like the platform, if it's not where your people are hanging out, don't do it.
Yeah, we need to make this easy, right?
Right.
My most successful marketing was being part of a group, and I wasn't even trying. Didn't even join it from a marketing perspective. I was just part of this group, and it just so happened to be my people, and it just so happened to be something I could engage with really easily because it felt good, and that generated tons of clients for me, right? I think that's where we met, I think.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And so marketing doesn't have to be hard, does it?
No. And if it does feel hard all the time, you need to make an adjustment. It may be that you're not talking to the right people, or you're looking for them in a place that they aren't hanging out. Because like you said, it should be easy. It should be a conversation, and it should feel like an invitation. This doesn't have to be a terrible, like, struggle all the time.
it doesn't have to be a give and take, right? It can be just a mutually beneficial collaboration.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I'm curious, you spent all this time building up an audience and a business in the travel sector. So how has that served you, and how did you know you needed to make a transition?
So I noticed that the people I was talking to were in the travel industry, but they weren't exactly who I expected. And so I thought when I started working in the travel industry, it would be like people managing destinations or who had a brick and mortar experience. And so I was kind of doing like some guerrilla marketing, talking to them and reaching out. But the people I was really connecting with were all these women who were starting their online travel businesses. And it was like this more niche area that kind of had some overlap outside the travel industry. And I realized, oh, this is what I love. This is who I love talking to and inspiring, because it's a very flexible business. It's something that that's happening a lot right now. But then that's just who I love, and it doesn't have to be anything to do with travel. So I kind of just made that transition to widen my pool, not cutting anybody out, not saying like I never want to work in the travel industry again, because I love travel businesses, but realizing that the feeling of sharing with women who are starting a business, who are in that process of realizing how much agency we really have over our lives, is just wonderful for me. It lights me up, and I enjoy it so much that it doesn't feel like work. Like I can just come up with ideas for them all day long, and like I'm happy to keep going. Like so that's what made me make the change, was knowing that this is where I light up, and not necessarily trying to slog for these little businesses in pockets around the world that I don't necessarily connect with naturally.
Mm. So that was a real evolution for you. And thank goodness you were able to be that aware of yourself.
Well, yes. And then talking to you helped me a lot, because I think we got on the phone for the first time right around the time I was making that change. And you looked at what I was offering, was like, hey, this is more valuable. Because I think we talked about the strategy that I do for people, because at the time I was doing a lot of copywriting and creating these strategies in the background to deliver the copy. And it was like, wait a minute, this process is extremely valuable, and you're just doing it without even telling anyone that you're doing it. And I was like, oh, you're right.
I think you were charging $25 for it or something too.
It was like $500, but it was still like bundled up with everything else. And yeah, so realizing, oh, I need to be talking about this strategy because people need this. And it makes it something that I'm giving them that they can repeat. Like instead of giving them a one-off copy, like a piece of copy, I'm showing you, hey, this is how you create copy that really works and connects with people. And this is what you need to use over and over and over. So it becomes much more valuable because it's theirs. It's not just a deliverable that they can only use once.
Yeah, so that's really important. I work with a lot of copywriters, and the trick for people who don't want to have to be endlessly tethered to having someone else do that work, because there's a lot of copy we have to write as business owners, right? The trick there is to just help people figure out how to do this themselves with their own voices and still make it like compelling. I'll hire out all my sales pages. I don't even try, right? But for all of my other copy, like I want to be able to be self-sufficient. I want to be able to know how to not do this brain dump that sounds like a seizure on a page because I know so much about my business. Like having some process to distill what's important.
Yes, that distillation is such an important part, because a lot, yeah, like you said, a lot of people stop at the brain dump and then they wonder why people aren't reading the whole thing, or not connecting with it. And it's because you just kind of vomited on the page and you didn't think about your reader. And so learning the process of remembering your reader and remembering who you're talking to and distilling your work down to what they need to know and communicating it at the right time is so valuable, because then you don't have to start over every time with a copywriter, answering all these questions because you don't know where you are.
Is there some trick to being able to write that way? Is there something that you help your clients kind of understand or learn?
Um, there are some kind of shifts in perspective that are important, but it comes down to thinking about it from their perspective, and just like, don't feel like you have to impress anyone. A lot of us learn to write for English papers, for class or academic papers or whatever, and that does not serve you in business at all. Like, you do not need to start with a thesis and then back it up with 5 points. So just, I don't think there's really any like super easy trick. It just takes practice and like remembering over and doing it every day. And just, I know I wish there was like an easy trick, but it's definitely more of a, write every day and remember who you're talking to and see what connects, and you're going to get a feel for it over time.
It's totally true. I am in a writing program right now because I finally realized I needed to get my writing back out of me, right? And all my scholarships were in writing and theater, and I've been doing neither one of those things. But it's so true that, having been in academia for a long time and also being in corporate for a long time, I learned to write a certain way that totally did not resonate when it translated into more marketing copy in the online world, where you have to be able to write in order to compel people, because you're not meeting with them face to face. You're not, the sooner I can get somebody speaking to me, the better. But in absence of that, I still need to be able to compel them in some way with my writing. And it's like, I just came out of one of my writing group sessions this morning where we get a prompt and we just write, right? You have to make it a regular practice. And part of the great thing about that is that we meet every 2 weeks and we just write. So yeah, so I think there's an opportunity to help people build those habits, right? To build those habits, but not just writing in one way, building the habit of writing in this way that you're speaking emotionally to people. Let's face it, people buy based on what they feel, right?
Yes. And like you said about the habits, kind of to counteract what I just said about remembering who you're talking to, I would also say, if that scares you and you don't feel like you're a good writer and looking at that blank page is just terrifying, I would say practice free writing. That's a habit that creative writers talk about a lot, and it's just put pen to page or fingers to keyboard and don't stop for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And don't worry about editing. So separating the creation process from the editing process can be so important for people who are still learning to write in a way that really connects with people. Because when we're self-editing, when we're trying to create the final product while we're creating the first draft, that can become a real like stifling thing for a lot of people. And some people kind of naturally, like, if you're good at talking about your business but not good at writing about it, you can record yourself and Siri will write it for you. She will do a terrible job, but she will try. And getting that out on paper is hard. Just go ahead and free write, and then later come back and look at it and remember, what do people really need to know? Like, what is important for them, not for me.
That's awesome. And one of the challenges I've always had with starting to write something is the blank page, right? It's just the start of something. So I have a whole process now where I start with video. I will do video, and then I will transcribe that video. I have a really awesome application called Descript, which I just somehow found, and it's freaking awesome. You can edit video with just based on the words, and it'll cut out the parts of the video that have the words attached to it. Yeah. But it also creates these transcripts. So my process is I take those transcripts and I start building on those to write articles. And then it just kind of like it flows the other way. So whatever works for you, and you can get prompts, right? There are apps that'll give you writing prompts.
I have a service for that.
Do you? Oh, amazing. Tell me more about it.
Oh, it's the XOXO Unruly Woman weekly prompts. Because like you said, whatever process works for you, like however you like creating, you can recycle that content into another platform. Like if you feel like you should be writing, but you like video, start with video. Like there's no right way to do it. And if anybody tells you it has to be this way, they're trying to sell you something that you may or may not need.
That's awesome. So maybe we can link up to that service in the show notes, because I think that that's something a lot of people would take advantage of.
That would be great, because so there's a lot of people selling prompts and a lot of free apps for prompts and a lot of like, here's your Excel spreadsheet for what you need to share every single day based on the holiday calendar or whatever. But what I find people that in my circles and my clients need most of the time from their content is knowing, how do I connect with people and when do I sell? Because I don't know when to do that or how. And I always want to share with people, start with the connection and build that over time. Here's what people need to know about you. And here's what you need to talk about to show people who you're talking to. And then that invitation, that selling becomes natural because you've established that relationship. And so that's how I try to teach content marketing.
Well, I think that's really interesting because, we started out talking about you helping people craft their messages, but there's this whole follow-on service that people need, which is, how do I now go out and disseminate that information in a really organic way, right? In a way that is like all about creating connection, because I think people lack that. They want to be told what to do. They want some help creating those marketing habits, right?
Right. And you need a way to build momentum, but you also need a container for that momentum. And so that's kind of how the messages and the content work together to me is, first, I teach people, let's build your container. Let's build the bucket, the foundational message that will connect people and that you can always send people to. But then this content marketing builds momentum and starts pouring, excited, ideal clients into the container that you've built. And the two work in tandem. And some people start with the message, but they don't have the content. And some people want to start with the content, but what they really need is the message. And so figuring out that balance and building both at the same time is kind of the winner.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. And I think that that's providing a full service that people are having a hard time finding together, right? Yes. How do I create the messaging, but then also what do I do with it?
Exactly. How do I get the attention, the visibility, the excitement? And then where do I take it?
Right. Okay. So tell me, like, if you could choose one of your most pivotal moments in your business, what would you say it has been?
Ooh, honestly, probably that paradigm shift of invitation. Now it feels really natural to me, but I love helping people have that moment of realizing selling doesn't have to be a win-lose situation. It can be a win-win invitation to join me on this journey. Because I had that back in February of last year, about a month and a half after I had taken my business full time, and I was still, trying to figure out how to sell. And somebody said to me, just to connect with one person a day. Mm-hmm. And I did, and it became so easy. Like I would start a conversation with no real plan in mind, not necessarily thinking I have to sell this to this person today. And more of just, let's see what happens. And it would become so much easier to get clients, and because I didn't have that pressure behind it. So realizing that, changing my perspective from this has to work to this may work, and this is an opportunity, it was a real game changer for my mental health. Just going from putting all this pressure on myself to saying, I don't have to get every piece of business possible. I don't have to take every project possible. Working with ideal clients is a totally different game, and that's all I want. I didn't start this business to work 90 hours a week and feel terrible about myself. Like I could go back to a corporate job and do that. This is mine, and I'm going to build it in a way that feels good and works and actually helps people make changes. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, like when I started to figure out, and over time you figure out what are some of the sort of triggers that indicate there's a person that you're speaking to who may not be ideal. Once I figured those out, I have no problem letting people go now, because I want my life to be awesome every day. And all of the clients I work with now are awesome. And that's because I let the people go, and I got my messaging really clear, and it changes so much. Like when you wake up and you're like, oh God, I have to get on this call with this, like, what, I don't live that way, right?
Right. Like you could go back to your job and have, easy to get health insurance and like live that way without all the stress of owning your own business, because it can be very stressful if you're having to do things, deal with clients that are a nightmare. Like
Yeah. We
I
don't want.
don't believe in dealing with nightmare clients. A lot of people feel like they have to, and I'm like, you don't.
No, no, you're totally right. So what do you wish you'd known before you started your business that you know now?
Oh, that connection is everything.
Mm.
For years before I took my business full time, I was trying to build this brand or this business just by blogging and running ads with my just a little bit of disposable income. And you know it doesn't work like that. Like, yes, some people are really good at Facebook ads, but it still comes down to connecting with the right people and learning and just making sure that the people in your corner have your back and you're sharing your message with real people and not just trying to like shout on Twitter. It sounds kind of obvious, but I feel like a lot of people live in that space where they feel like I have to talk to the masses before they learn to talk to one person.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I call it sniper marketing, right? We have
Yes,
guerrilla marketing. I call it sniper marketing. And it's like 100 times better use of my time than trying to reach a million people
exactly.
one
So
by
I
one.
wish I had started that way.
Cool. Okay, so one of the questions I ask people all the time, because I always love the answers, what's the difference between what we're hearing out there in the online business world and what's real?
um, that there's only one way to do any specific thing. There's so many people trying to sell us something online that is um, a, not necessarily, because they're like, this is the exact way to write a Facebook ad. This is the exact way to build a course. This is the exact way to, go from having clients to having evergreen income. And the fact is, their process probably works for some people, but it is not the only way. And if it doesn't feel right for you and you're just looking for a silver bullet, it's not going to happen. Like, I spent a long time looking for that one thing that was going to work. It doesn't exist. You have to just keep pivoting like moment by moment and taking one step in the direction of this business works for me and feels right for me and is serving the people that I want to serve the way I want to serve them. And just get like, it's like you're in a funnel and you're slowly getting better and better at what you're trying to create, instead of like, it's not this direct line, get on this train and you're done.
Right. And there is no vision for what you're trying to work towards other than what you have for yourself, right? And I think this personalization is so important for people to understand that the more they subscribe to these cookie cutter business models or cookie cutter frameworks, like I have a framework, but it's
Me
more
too.
like, here's the foundation. Now you get to create something on top of it, right? You get to make this yours, but just make sure you have these pieces, you're doing something about these pieces, and that you've got the structure behind your business, but you get to make it your own. And in fact, you should make it your own, because if you don't make it your own, you're not going to do the work, right? And it's not going to show up as authentic.
Exactly. It's like, I think of it as cooking rather than baking. Like, you've got to know what the building blocks are, but then add your own spices and figure out, like, I will run a metaphor into the ground. But like, just knowing that you have to make it your own. And also, it's more fun this way. Like, you don't want to build somebody else's business. It already exists, but there is space for your voice and your perspective and your story, as long as you're being real and trying to build yours, not theirs.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, go make it as janky as possible. Like, just go make it as whacked as you want, as long as it's what you want, right?
Totally. I mean, and also thinking that you have to have something like all this perfect stuff. Like, you have to have the perfect sales page, you have to have the perfect funnel, you have to have the perfect launch. No, I have seen people sell out things with a Google Doc, like no sales page, no ads, nothing. If you're creating something that's valuable and you're talking to the right people, you're going to learn and you're going to keep creating something better and better until it sells out, even if you don't have a perfect sales page.
Oh, hallelujah, sister. Go out and make a mess, right? Go make a mess. And people don't care if you have a nice sales page. People care that they understand what you're telling them, right? They understand that what they're going to get. They couldn't care less if it's a pretty professionally written sales page or if it's just like a letter.
Right. And yeah, over time, those things are great. Those countdown timers, those tools, they can keep helping you tweak and get better and better, but it doesn't have to be perfect when you start.
No, it really doesn't. So, Ashton, what's next for you?
Definitely launching the kind of community and turning my one-on-one service into this group moment where we can do it together, kind of with friends and other people who are on the same page. So that's definitely very loose. It is not perfect. It is the Google Doc version right now. I'm bringing it to life in March, and I have an application open right now for that. It's just to teach people to share their story and build their brand in a way that feels right and actually connects with the right people. So that's what I'm building right now, and I'm really excited about it.
Awesome. Getting out there and making a mess, right?
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay. So we are coming up on the end of our conversation, just to be respectful of time. Can you tell the audience where they can find you?
Yes. So my website is brazenstory.com, and that has all of my offers and my story on it. But I hang out mostly on Instagram, and my username there is Ashton Whitney. So that's usually where you can find me hanging out probably too much.
Yeah, but it's working for you, right?
I love it. I probably spend too much time like looking at memes really, but I love connecting there and actually talking to people, and it's really fun.
Okay, awesome. So go connect with Ashton, either through her website, go sign up for her freebie, go sign up for her upcoming group program. I think it's going to be awesome. And this is a lady that just knows how to get out there and be curious and to make that necessary mess and sort of figure it out as she goes. And that's a great example for everybody who's listening. So that's a wrap for this episode. Such an amazing conversation. Go check out Ashton, go connect with her. And thank you for tuning in today to hear her story. The episodes that you're listening to are all featuring members of my free private Facebook group called the Real Deal Business Coaching Group, where we have daily prompts to keep you focused on building your business and sharing your everyday challenges, bi-weekly virtual coffee chats, open coaching, and member support from this incredible community. If you'd like to join our community or if you'd like to be featured on the show, I'd love for you to come and hang out with us in the group. Links in the show notes, or search us up Real Deal Business Coaching in Facebook to find us. And finally, I would love for you to join us for our next episode, where we're going to be speaking to Jürgen Strauss, who partners with innovative, exceptional business coaches and consultants to build their professional credibility and connect with their ideal clients. Jürgen's awesome. I was interviewed on his podcast a little while ago, and I can't wait to have a conversation with him. So thank you again for being here. And if you've enjoyed today's content, I would love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on, because this helps us share these stories with an even bigger audience. So until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep being real.